tonight's work session, Wednesday, July 6th, 2022. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Seconded.
Katie, will you call the roll, please?
They do have everybody, right?
Yeah. But several are,
It'd be good to call them.
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah, I will. I just wanted to make sure, I didn't know if everybody was here, if I need to cross that meeting went off.
I think we've got it.
okay,
We
everybody's
got everybody here.
Yep.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
yes.
Commissioner Goff,
Yes.
Commissioner Bates.
Yes.
Commissioner Matusek,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr.
Lisa, can you unmute there? Yeah. There we go.
Sorry.
And Chair Newton.
Yes. Do we want to have a discussion about our agenda? Any discussion? Format?
How about what we have intend to achieve?
I think that'd probably be good.
Okay.
One thing, let me put this out early on. Well, actually, we have taken public testimony in the past. I feel like we've gotten a lot of really good feedback. I have some more here to pass out for you. Debatia has provided me with. I'll pass this out to those here. I'll give to Jeff to put in the record for you on Zoom. Some articles for us to read. I thought maybe tonight we would try really diving in and trying to make some progress on some of the things we've heard from people.
Sure.
And maybe take testimony at the end, maybe 3 minutes or not at all. I'll leave that for us to discuss.
Do we have that option? I guess we do, don't we?
We do.
Okay.
But I do think, I feel like we've had a lot of one discussion around it, a lot of input. Now, I feel like we all want to make some progress on it. If you guys agree, let's do
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Okay.
let's do
Jan,
are you okay with that?
I couldn't hear, I was, sorry, I was.
No, she's not on, but
Here you go.
she usually wants to say something.
Oh, sure. So Jan, what we're saying is we're going to work real hard for an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes. And then we'll take public testimony after that, give people a chance to hear what we're talking about and make comments after that. Because there's not been a whole lot new since the last time we met. So my assumption is that any testimony might be better after we've had a chance to put some new information out there. So again, this was provided to us by Debatia. We each get a chance to look at. Did I give you 2 things later?
Just one. I got the, I don't say so. Thank you.
And Jeff, you have both, right?
So these are going to be part of the public record?
Deb, do you want this for tonight's, for them to
Just read
read?
it later.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be, I want them to get
We'll
the job.
make copies for those that aren't here and send it to you after the meeting.
Sure, I made lots of copies, so you're good.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll give you all the copies that I have.
This is pleasurable reading.
And I know we went really late last time. I don't think that was as productive for all of us. So let's not do that. Let's see where we're at, an hour and 45 minutes from now, 8 o'clock.
Sure. Yeah.
Good time to stop. To your point, Mike, in terms of what we want to accomplish, how we want to accomplish it, we had talked about just taking chunks of this and kind of going through it. We could start in section 1, moving forward, and just turn pages. It seems like a lot of the meat and the potatoes start at about section 3.
Right.
But there may be points in these first couple sections we want to touch on. But then when we get to 3, we can really dive into some of them.
Okay. So this hasn't been changed since we met last, right, Jeff? Okay.
And we have Charles that has his hand raised.
Oh, Charles? Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I would like to understand, basically, once we approve a plan and it's approved by the city council, what happens? What are the next steps? Do these individual projects come back to us to approve again in more detail? Are the consultants going to be involved in it? Who's going to be carrying out the more detailed work?
And so I can answer that. So this will be, like you said, you'll do your recommendations to the city council. City council then will weigh which ones they want to amend in the document. I think that we have on board, parametrics will be helping with us. And I think for a few more months for it, so they'll be able to help amend and the document and then move that to council. And we expect them to be on board through that. And, but after that, no, the parametrics won't be a part of it anymore. But then what we would do is then those projects then would then go, of course, to most all of our, like whether it's water or wastewater or any of those master plans that we have, then it's upon city council to prioritize which projects they'd like to see and then move through, those would move through a project phase for each one of those items. Depending, of course, upon budgeting and all of those other committees that weigh in on each one of those projects.
So if there's like a decision that we want to make the two streets one way, would that come back to the planning commission?
So if whether you're wanting to do kind of, you're saying like that pilot project, for instance, downtown.
Yeah.
I would say that one would not likely come back to the planning commission. It would likely go to the design review board because will have elements that will change the landscape or furniture of the downtown, the planning of the downtown. But that generally doesn't come back to the planning commission.
And I think one thing we all need to remember is that none of these things are going to happen without going through all the due process. And I think there's people in the community that think if we send it to city council that all of these projects are going to happen, and they're not necessarily going to. It's, it's a framework for possible things that could happen.
For instance, just that project like we just spoke of, any of these we're going to have a budget behind them.
Right.
So that's still, everything has to go through the public budgeting process for that. And so, most communities have a yearly capital improvements plan. I don't think we have, such a set process for capital improvements plan, but it's a part of our budgeting process is how we do that.
I know we'll hit it, but the intention of that language that Bill provided us was to address the question that Charles asked, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Section 3. Hey, can somebody tell me where to find this online? It's not in the packet. And I've looked just searching on transportation system plan and I can't find it.
It's on the meeting page
Yeah.
for today.
Is it?
If you, let's see if I go to, it's also on the TSP website, but on the meeting page for today, I think it's just right at the top, there's a link.
Oh, the meeting page. Oh, the details. Okay, sorry.
Who do we have here tonight? Do we have anybody from Parametrics here tonight?
Yeah, I think we have Eddie. Eddie's on, at least haven't seen him yet, but.
Hey, this is Eddie, everybody. I am here. I'm just listening in. I'm just back from a couple of weeks of vacation, so I'm out of practice, so to speak, but I'll be sitting around for the duration of the conversation.
Great. Thank you for being here.
And then we have Michael from ODOT.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here, Michael. So I guess as questions come up, if we get to a place, we can ask them. Is Bill with us tonight or not?
Bill's not.
Okay. Okay. Well, to start with the introduction, I peruse this. It seems kind of like a setup for what happened, how we did it. Does anybody on the commission have any questions or concerns in this section that they want to bring out, address, change?
This section is which one?
Section 1, introduction. I can pass it over to you.
No, I haven't. No, I found it. But the thing if we want to go through it all, what will the plan do? Again, it's the same question that Charles asked, and it doesn't really reflect what we've been talking about. The City of Cannon Beach TSP is a long-range plan that will guide investments for the next 20 years. It will include prioritized lists of needed transportation projects. you might want to soften that a little bit because it's not, it's a menu of things we might be able to do, but don't have to, right?
This might be the place where we insert that language that we were working on last week,
Right.
which Mike's language that Bill revised, maybe that comes in here. How will the changes we're discussing now be recorded and passed forward? Or how will we see these changes made?
Yeah, what I suggest we do is after tonight's work session, I'll take all of your suggestions, your amendments, get with Parametrics, Eddie.
Oh, maybe.
Work with them to incorporate those into, recommended kind of a strike through or insert type of language. Okay.
Where are you talking about inserting this? What page and what number?
Well, I think that's where we should go next. It seems like the appropriate place, section 1, but where would be the question in this?
Because there's the purpose is 1.1. 1.2 is the process. 1.3 is the policy context. Is that what you're talking about, that section?
Yeah, that's the section, Lisa.
Well, I think in 1.3 is where I envisioned it, but you guys can put it whatever.
I can say 1.3, maybe, policy context.
Policy and it's loading for me right now.
I think that makes sense. But can we just go back to the first page and the picture on the first page?
Are you unhappy with the picture?
Well, it's not from the beach. It's Ecola State Park.
So you would like a picture that's in the city limits?
Yeah,
Okay,
not a picture of someplace else that's a state park.
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great catch. So, Jeff, are you writing these down, or Katie, you've got them? Okay, good.
And it's being recorded.
And recorded. Okay, all right. Great catches.
Or, I'm happy with anywhere in 1.1 works. 1.3 actually works for part of it. 1.2. So here, let me make a recommendation. Why don't we break that piece up? I don't have that either, but put the first paragraph in. No, I have that.
Oh.
Put that language that Bill
Oh,
provided.
right.
Put that first paragraph of that language in 1.1.
Yeah.
And then plan process, I think that second paragraph in 1.2. Policy context. Yeah, I'm okay with it like that.
It would go in 1.1 and 1.2.
Correct.
See, it seems to me that it really fits in with 1.3, but
Okay, and we can put it there too. I don't, I haven't edited 1.1 and 1.2 to make it consistent with 1.3, and maybe that needs to be done, but so, once you start adding language, Lisa, you kind of got to go through the first 2 paragraphs and change those a little bit.
I
don't see why we have to change plan process because it's purely descriptive. And I agree with Lisa that policy is where that piece seems to fit best.
Okay, all right.
Put it there then.
Put it there. That's good.
Do we need to vote on that? I don't think so. No.
Consensus.
I hear consensus.
Yeah.
Saying both paragraphs in 1.3.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
One thing, and this might just be Eddie, this may be something for you guys to talk about. This is in 1.4.2. You talk about environmental justice populations. Throughout the document, I noticed environmental justice populations, disadvantaged communities, communities of concern. I think we need to tighten that language up just to be consistent throughout the document. And maybe it needs to start with what needs to be there from a legislative standpoint. But I remember reading through this a few times, just going, well, what's the difference? Or is there a difference? And so I think your team should go through there and look for consistency in that language. I'm assuming it's the same group, but I just don't know that.
Yeah, I think that's something that we could address relatively easily. The environmental justice component of this is part of the TGM contract and generally required by the state. So that's why that language is specifically used. Communities of concern is kind of a catch-all phrase for a broader base or subset of residents, but we can certainly make it streamlined to minimize confusion. Not a problem.
So are we down to 1.42 or?
I'm just kind of, unless someone else has something in section 1 they want to talk about, I'm just going through the notes I have. If
Okay.
someone else has.
Yeah,
notes.
I-
I think having those first 2 paragraphs right off the bat in this first section is great. I feel like we. Eddie, just quickly, and I looked at this with a much different eye, maybe a much slower eye. We had a little less on our plate between our last meeting and this, so I could focus more on this. I'm looking at the demographics for Cannon Beach. I'm hoping you can help me define this. Under transportation characteristics, it's, let's see, walked is 31% of what? The people don't have cars and they just walk?
What number are you on?
Sorry, I'm on page 13, section 1. This subsection 142. This is the page with a bunch of demographic information.
Yes, so I would have to go back to look at the specific table from the community survey. But typically when employment information and commuter information is reported, it's only for the percentage of the population that is considered to be working. So for example, there might be some proportion of the community that's retired, or of course, people that are under 18 that are not legally able to work. So it's a subset of the population. So that 31% of walked is 31% of the working population in Cannon Beach.
Okay.
At least according to those statistics, again, reported directly through the American Community Survey.
Okay. It was interesting to me that, and again, maybe with an older demographic and what are there other qualifiers could be in there, it would make more sense. But between walked or had 0 vehicles, you have 42% walking with 0 vehicles. It opens up a bigger question for me about what transportation means to local residents. And that is a theme that I think, is there a comment?
No, that was me coughing. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. One of the things that I'd like you guys to think about and maybe come back to us with is we have a lot of goals and objectives that seem focused on, and this is my opinion, but it seemed to me in reading through this, there was a lot of goals and objectives that did not focus on the local population as much as it focused on the traffic coming through the city. So I'll give you the easiest example. Parking in neighborhoods wasn't addressed beyond kind of the 2 primary areas, but it is an issue in peak months or access to parking downtown if someone needs to, if someone is working downtown or wants to go to the post office or grocery shopping. So it seems like there ought to be, we have the importance of village character being in there. We have the importance of environmental justice, but I think we also need to, and certainly business and tourism is in there, but I think we also need to add, the local population in consideration. And if that's in there, maybe it wasn't as direct as the others for me, but I do think more emphasis needs to be added on thinking about transportation for people who live here. And as we go along, I'll give specific examples of where I see that, but I just think in the broad picture, I was missing that from the get-go and would like to see more.
Yeah, and Jeff, what's coming to mind for me right now as well is I think like we did in the past with the memoranda that we were producing, it would be helpful for us to document all of these comments from the Planning Commission and then respond directly in a way that's easily summarized. And then that way there should be a clear crosswalk between what we address in the memo versus what actually gets changed in the TSP. Because I think some of the stuff might require some tweaks. Some of the stuff might just require further clarification in meetings like these. So we just want to make sure that we capture all of that and we respond appropriately. So Jeff, we can talk offline about how to best capture this and report back to the commission.
That'd be great if you could end up summarizing it like you did in the past.
Absolutely.
Anything else in section 1 people saw?
I didn't see a lot there,
Okay.
except for what I offered.
Anything else in section 1? Should we move on? Section 2? Existing and future transportation needs.
It's kind of the same comment that you put in. It seems to be, it was 24.6%. Traffic volumes projected to increase by 24.6% by 2040. And I don't know exactly where that number came from. Is it Ernie? Eddie, can you help me with that?
Yeah, so that was based on our traffic model. I admittedly am not a traffic engineer, so I couldn't tell you precisely the math behind that, but I know that it accounts for historical traffic growth in the community. It uses some statistical modeling to project forward, and then was also further verified by some of the counts that we took as part of the project. So between those three, you're able to triangulate and get a sense for what growth would look like stretched out over 20 years.
Yeah, here's my concern is I don't know the model. I'm sure it's a good model, but if you use something that's applicable to Seaside, it's not going to work for Cannon Beach, right? I think we might find that our traffic growth is going to be much higher than that simply because of the increase in tourism. And that kind of gets to some of this material that we had handed out. That there are a lot of communities dealing with this same issue and dealing them in ways that are very creative. And I think without recognizing that we're on life support right now, we're not going to get the right, at least in terms of traffic, the right recommendations when we need them. So that 24.6% is fine, but we should acknowledge that it could be wildly higher. And that, the purpose of this plan is to deal with that kind of growth.
Yeah, and Michael,
I think Michael.
oh, sorry. Yeah, Michael, I know you have a comment, but I just wanted to respond to Mike real quick. And Mike, I think those are good points. There are some previous memos that I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review where we actually provide the detailed traffic tables. And to your point, these are likely not perfectly accurate. And I don't think anybody would tell you with a straight face that these are crystal ball type forecasts. I think it's the best that we have. It follows ODOT best practices for how traffic modeling is typically done throughout the state. It's verified by our engineering team. And it's really just the best guess that we have for, establishing a baseline on which we can build potential recommendations. And I just wanted to also address the idea that, you're probably right. I mean, with tourism, tourism itself is such a difficult thing to predict. I think it would be very difficult to precisely estimate the amount of tourism and what that cycle would look like over the next 20 years. So it's definitely a shot in the dark. But I think what we can count on is that it's likely to continue to grow. Cannon Beach is a special place and people are going to continue to come here. And I do want to respond to the comment about maybe not focusing enough on the residents. I think the reason why we're so focused on that tourism is because that is likely going to be the highest impact on the community for local residents, for year-round residents. And, that's backed up by a couple of data points. One being, of course, that the traffic is being driven by regional growth. I think the other one being that if you look at the population forecasts, the local population is not expected to grow significantly over the next 20 years. So if you have a relatively stable population and significant traffic growth, that is almost all going to come from tourism. So maintaining that quality of life for residents and making sure that people are able to park downtown, get to their homes, et cetera, is really going to hang on the city's ability to manage that tourism. And again, that's not to serve tourists. It's really to protect access and mobility for residents. So
Eddie, what you just said was perfect. Why can't we put that in this section right now?
Well, I'm glad this is being recorded. I will try to put that.
I think that
that language back in the plan.
Repeat.
And I
I
think
think
just,
that,
to-
I think that's a great idea to put it in. And I think that things like that, I think there's some folks in the community who felt like this whole transportation plan is being put in place to serve the tourists. And when you say that, it puts a whole different light on it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Kerr. And yeah, I think we can certainly, and again, this strikes me as the kind of thing that, I would say we've addressed in the plan, but perhaps is falling flat in terms of the narrative. And there are certainly opportunities for us to bring that narrative out in a way that's more clear and in a way that really communicates our intent with this plan, which is, absolutely to serve the residents. I just don't think you can have a good transportation plan that's focused on people that come through, once or twice a year. That's just not good planning. So
Yeah, I think spelling it out in clear, concise language, simplified, is the best way to do it. Not
Right,
plain.
Lisa. And then the rule of thumb is say it 3 times. Say it in the beginning, say it in the middle, and say it at the end.
I agree.
yeah, and Commissioner Bates, I think that actually to be more specific, it seems like that should go up front in the purpose as well. The purpose of this plan is to address these needs for residents. I think we can address it again when we're developing solutions, and I think we can say it again when we're talking about implementation, just to make sure that it's woven through.
Perfect.
Okay,
And don't call me Commissioner Bates, call me Mike, please.
you got it. Sorry, Mike.
I like you referencing regional development. I think that will really resonate with people more than just development in our city, because that doesn't, there's not a lot of places to develop right now. There are a few, but not many. So regional development will make sense, and why we have tourism. This is a great place. Parking 226, page 21 is a great place to. I'm looking for more tie-ins between these concepts that we're working through. So we talk about affordability, and one thing this commission has heard is we pay lip service to that, but we don't actually have any meaningful action plan behind it. I think under parking, there's a chance to tie affordability into some of the actions that we take through the TSP, which is one of the things we need to strive for in this. We've heard from a number of people about paid parking. I think, I don't know if you'd mentioned it here or later, but you might do one of the, I'll call it menu items. Hey, maybe there's an opportunity for paid parking, and some of those funds could be considered to go back to either means for transportation for the, again, I have to look at the language, communities of concern or environmental justice populations. Some of those funds being used for those populations out that have transportation challenges, or, I don't know if we want to reach for housing, but if we could tie something in the management, this parking transportation plan, say parking, that's an easy one, where there was a charge for it, and we brought that back into something that we're trying to achieve here too, I think it would give a lot more meaning rather than, yeah, check, we hit it, we said it, now move on. But so I don't have the words for it, Eddie, but I do think that there's an opportunity in this section and others, 226 and others, to talk about paid parking and bringing that back to some of the other, especially the affordability.
I don't object as long as it goes back into transportation on that. I think it's a good idea. If you put it into affordable housing, you're going to dilute our transportation plan.
That's my concern there, is we dilute it, but I think you can take it to something like bus service.
Yeah,
you can take it
for
to employees don't pay for parking, or they have special permits, or something there. We got to have something with teeth in it that talks about real actionable items that address this.
I think that's a great idea, but it seems like that's going to be a specific comment that would belong later when there are actually bullet points. What are we going to do? X, Y, Z.
Without a question, it definitely does need to go later. I was just looking, I saw that there are some specifics around parking. There's 621 on street and 1,643 off street stalls, unlimited stays. Maybe after that, consider paid, but it doesn't have to go there.
Yeah, and I think Mickey addressed it. I think, that probably doesn't need to be in the existing condition type area. It should be later on. And when we talk about the parking, I don't know if Michael still would like to speak, but And Clay, if that's okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. And I hesitate to maybe get back into details around traffic counts, just because there was some really good conversation happening here. But I did want to just maybe lend some information and perhaps some confidence to the data that was collected as part of this process. We actually went out and counted, I want to say at least 18 locations. Many of those were intersections. So we're counting all directions as part of those intersections. And that was done. As Eddie mentioned, we also went back and counted validation counts, just to see, of course, this happening during COVID, the spotlight was on where those volumes were and where they weren't. The state also monitors permanent in-ground counting devices, automatic traffic counters on 101, to where we can look back and look at those seasonal trends and do seasonal adjustment and things like that. So within, certainly at the time of the TSP right now, there's a very high level of confidence in the numbers that we have in there and the results of the traffic analysis. As we get out 5-10 years, it's still a lot of confidence. Year 10, it's a lot of communities will go out and collect new count data just to make sure that the trends that were done as part of this project still align. Good examples when we saw a recession, 08, 09, and so on, that was a big hit to traffic volumes, and it put a dip in our forecasted. But again, historic trends forecasting out 20 years, when we look back at those plans, we're just updating one right now, another project we had worked on. And I want to say we were about 1.5% off. Depending on how you look at it, maybe up to 3%. So surprising that they track like that sometimes, but certainly periodic review of the data and the planning document is a critical part of that. So.
If you want another example of that though, Michael, look at the last 2 years where we haven't had an off season either, right? I don't think that your models will catch that. So the traffic has been constant for the last 2 years. So in my mind, it kind of blows any model right out of the sky. What we need is an acknowledgement that we honestly don't know what's going to happen.
Mike, would you mind explaining to me why you don't think a model could capture the fact that there wasn't an off season? I'm just not following why you think that's not possible.
Well, he mentioned that his models were off because his modeling was off because of the economic downturn in 2008, 2009. On the flip side, when we normally have slack traffic or low traffic in the winter months, that doesn't happen anymore. In fact, our traffic tends to be a little bit almost as high as summer months on some winter weekends and weeks, which never happened before. And I think it's just a symptom of the problem we're trying to address here. And again, the influence of people who are interested in visiting for whatever reason and for whatever period of time don't really fit into models all that well.
I think we'll have to discuss this offline some other time, but I did computer modeling with neural systems for my PhD. So I know that computer models are incredibly complex and actually can take into account a variety of data. So I'm just having a hard time understanding why something like, probably if it was able to capture counts coming in from streets, it's going to reflect the fact that the traffic didn't change in the winter. I don't think it's that complex an issue that the model is so staid it can't do that. We don't have to prolong things. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and say, I think it's really impressive if a model is within 1 to 3%, and it gives me a lot of confidence that it is capturing our current patterns. But
okay, fair enough.
Any other, so section 2, we have the pedestrian system. We talked about parking a little bit, bicycle system, public transportation, freight.
Freight.
Check. Any other comments here from anybody on section 2?
I have none.
It would be, I don't know if you guys can get this or not, Eddie, but it would be interesting to see how other communities of a similar size with communities up in north or south or east or west of them, how they handle transportation between. We can't be alone in this, and I'd be curious, maybe it's not out there, maybe it hasn't been gathered, but I would wonder if we could find examples of other communities of about our size and how they handle public transportation.
Well, I know Seaside has a 500-page TSP.
500-page, wow.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah, and Clay, we can certainly pull some of that information out from the previous memo that we did. We did a sort of a scan of the regional plans that have already been developed to kind of get a baseline for how the Cannon Beach TSP could be structured. Of course, it's a unique community, so we had to, come up with something custom to this area. But yeah, there are certainly lots of plans out there that we can review in terms of how they structure their public transportation systems. I mean, so much of it is driven by ridership, and a lot of these coastal communities tend to be tourist based. So it's not unsimilar to Cannon Beach in the sense that a lot of these communities have relatively small systems that often will serve lower income or need-based populations, especially demand response type systems that can help people get to medical appointments and such. So, I feel like the TSP was pretty light on the transit element, just because the Sunset Empire plan really covers a lot of the service upgrades that were recommended. So, I guess really what we did for the TSP was looking at that plan, looking at the critical investments that we thought would complement some of the stuff in the TSP, and then kind of tried to elevate those. But admittedly, not many new ideas came from this process on the transit front.
What about, I'm just brainstorming here. What about brainstorming with the local businesses, figuring out when their shifts are, when people come to work, when they leave work, and seeing if you could get some consistency there? And maybe it's there already. And plan around that, because I get the onesie twosie trips are going to be tough and they're going to be slow and it's going to create a lot. But if you had, these businesses are serving many tourists. Those hours I'm amazed at how many businesses are not open Tuesday and Wednesday. They're very consistent. I would think that their hours would be consistent too. And if they could see a benefit to, I was at Bill's Tavern this afternoon. They closed early. They didn't have enough employees. If they could all begin to see, hey, if we can get people here, which they can't right now, and one way to do that is to have enough volume or velocity on our transit system, then yeah, let's get together as a business community and align our schedules so that we can get people moving more uniform. I'm just brainstorming.
Well, I know that, Kathy has made a big push over the last year for Sunset on van pools and, reached out to our staff and our community. So I know she's done it to the chambers and others. And so they continually try to do that, to work with the local chambers and business community, and with, our staffs and our departments, and saying, because there's a lot of funding out there for van pooling and things like that right now. And they're just trying to get those programs up and running, or more now education and awareness of them, So
That would suggest that we put that in here if it's not already. I don't recall specific language, but, working with local transit authorities to come up with alternative commuting options.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're already trying it, we ought to piggyback on that. What do you think, Jeff?
yeah, I think it's in there, but I'm happy to.
Can we beef it up a little bit?
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think
something.
if we go to page 34, I see there's transit and transit supportive policies, and there's 14 of them. Maybe we should double check that that's not already right up front. And I'm sure there's even more as we get further into the plan. So let's just double check that we haven't already covered this.
That's good.
Okay. Asterisk, we'll come back to it.
Yeah,
But it does seem that Sorry, Eddie, go ahead.
Oh, my apologies. Just real quick, I was going to add as well that I think the other area where this is covered is in the whole idea of the employer shuttle concept. So I think that was presented primarily as a way of managing parking. But I think on its own, a shuttle that's programmed to certain shift times and stuff like that is a strategy that we've seen in other communities that can be super effective in, providing some alternative ways for people to get downtown. And then also, once again, if you're tying it into some kind of an off-street parking system, can also help manage parking needs in downtown. So I think it's really kind of a double whammy, and probably needs a little bit more explanation either in the policies or elsewhere in the TSP. So that's documented in my notes.
I don't really see it in goal 4, foster a sustainable transportation system. It might be encompassed in that, it might not be, if it's there, Jeff,
Yeah, put it as its own bullet point.
yeah.
Yeah, there's something a little, it's a bit weak, but in 3.2.4 transit and transit supportive policies, we do have, where is it here? The city may fund and operate municipal shuttle, microtransit, or bike share programs. And that was, kind of a blanket recommendation that kind of gets at that employer-based TDM stuff, transit demand management. So like I said, I think there's opportunities to beef up that language in the policies.
Yeah, and I think like Mike said up there in goal 4, under the objectives, add a bullet point on transit.
Anything else in 2?
No.
Nothing else in 2? We all good moving to number 3, goals and objectives?
Yeah.
All right, this is where we get into the nitty gritty here.
Oh, boy. At Jeff's invitation, Jeff, I think we took an AR to actually provide language. And while I was gone, I couldn't do it, so my apologies, it was late, but I was just reading through Randy Neal's stuff. Is Randy here?
Yeah, he's on the call.
I was reading through Randy's stuff and, there's an interesting question in here that says, what are the good meaty solutions to solve these kind of things? And here he talks about residential parking and employer permit and reducing suggestion. I thought that was the intention to rewrite goal 4, and I took a stab at it. And the reality was I was trying to get at what Randy was trying to get at here, and that is let's take a whack at a real big thing and do something big. And so I provided some language for that. I think, Jeff, did you copy it here? It's on the second page of the handout that Jeff gave that starts with Charles Bennett's comments. Oh, is it? No, it's not there.
On the back.
Yeah, it is there. Okay, yeah.
And you all online? Share screen, thanks.
I don't know if those are right. I mean, it's pretty blunt compared to the fine language that the committee put into the plan, but I think as goal 4, we do need to strive for the moon. And whether you call it get cars off the road or improve resident or visitor satisfaction, and put down some big swings. Let's shoot for the home run. And so I provided some language, and then I filtered that down through 3.2 to put the objective and then the criteria. How would we know if we met that goal and how we would measure it? So I did provide, I guess what I'm saying is, look at what I've done with section 3.1, goal 4.
So I had thought that one of the points that came up in our last conversation was to actually talk a little bit more about environmental issues. So in original goal 4, there was avoid transportation impacts to Ocola Creek, shoreline, wetlands, other natural features. And I thought that part of our conversation was greenhouse gas reductions as well, to actually specify that as part of one of these goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I feel like it doesn't fit with visitor and resident satisfaction. So I wonder if sustainability should look more like an environmental section. And then I love some of the things you did, Mike, but they really would also fit into balancing the needs of different transportation system users, not necessarily in downtown and midtown, but it is about balance. And I think that's what you're recommending here. It's balance.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, before we get further, I also just wanted to flag something that I've talked about with Michael, Jeff, and Ryan. And, you know, I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying that obviously this is your plan. This is your community. And the TSP, therefore, is your product. So you can move it in whichever direction you think is appropriate. But I was going to say, you know, the rewriting of the goals strikes me as a little bit of a potential controversy. Just because, you know, the goals are typically the first things that we establish when we're doing these TSP processes. And we went out to the public and, you know, talked to folks about the goals. You know, they were reviewed by the PMT, Jeff, internal city staff, et cetera. And that was really the bedrock on which we built the entire TSP. So it feels a little bit dicey to me at this stage in the plan to go and rewrite that after it's already gone through a lot of process. I know there's been some skepticism about the amount of engagement that we did do. And again, this is your community and your plan, but I did want to flag that, you know, there might be opportunities to incorporate this thinking in other ways without necessarily rewriting the goals, which, you know, in my mind, we're pretty much set in stone. But, you know, we're flexible. We're here to serve you, but I did want to just flag that.
Eddie,
I don't remember.
Go ahead, Lisa, please.
I don't remember in the survey how much there was, or if there was anything regarding environmental protections, because I can't imagine that people in Cannon Beach would have a problem with that being another goal, and actually a fifth goal even. I just, unless it wasn't even included, I don't remember if it was included in the survey or not.
So goal 4, the original goal 4 was included, but you bring up an interesting idea, Commissioner Kerr, which would be to actually add a goal. I feel like that might be a little bit of an easier sell, but Mike, go ahead. I know you had some comments as well.
Michael, if you had comments, you're muted.
He's on mute, yeah.
Yeah, Michael, I think you're muted.
There we go.
I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand raised, but I was thinking comments, but I've kind of letting the discussion happen. You know, I hear what Eddie's saying, and I do think there was a lot of process, and I've said that all along. I mean, this, you know, we were able to afford this project a good timeline. You know, some TSPs are pretty tight at 9 months, maybe a year. So to be where we're at and to kind of give some breathing room for the time that we had to get feedback was great. Thinking to the goals, I think, you know, my take on it is that these goals helped inform, I mean, exactly how Mike had laid it out there. That, you know, you have a goal and then you have criteria, and that helps you identify, phase, or prioritize projects, programs, and policies that are part of a TSP. And so you want to organize edits in you know, thematically. So if you want to talk about local residents, and I think that fits in to sustainability as far as, you know, quality of life, placemaking, those type of things. You know, sustainability means a lot of things to different folks, but you want to augment or enhance that those goals to better align with the story that Cannon Beach wants to tell. I think the work happened, but what I'm hearing is that that wasn't that you guys aren't seeing that in the text. here. And so I think that's where the
issues
opportunity is to
farting.
kind of drill down and, if we want to talk about reducing greenhouse gas, that wasn't something that's put specifically in the goal. I think that's a great idea. We want to talk about.
It's in the state goals. I don't know why we'd object to it. In fact, what I put down here really reflects what's in the state rewrite goals. So, if there's an objection to what's done with 4, let's rewrite it. But let's also realize that, the state was a hell of a lot more aggressive than we are here.
So let's make it a separate goal,
Yeah,
goal number 5.
okay.
I think that works.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that, I haven't heard from reading Mike's list or what I've heard, even a few of the ones like I think Clay or someone said that also might go into 2, or maybe it was Mickey. Yeah, I think they could either easily fit into, or as like you said, the new environmental kind of goal. Because, look at move automobiles off the road. That's definitely part of the environmental and the reduction of the greenhouse gas kind of. Maximize opportunities for walking and biking. Well, that's honestly already in this enhanced safe 2.2 safety and comfort for people walking. We could just easily combine that, enhance safety and comfort for people walking while maximizing opportunities.
I was thinking more of, let's actually,
Trees,
let's sell
things like-
walking. Let's sell walking. Let's not just enhance safety.
Exactly. And so, I think we could put that there. And I honestly have always kind of, or it looks like to me that you guys, if that's not just for downtown and midtown, you could scratch downtown and midtown because we're concerned about the entire community for that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. And things like, not, being careful. I mean, like for building a bike path, for example, cutting down as few trees or impacting as few trees as possible would be one of the objectives under goal 5. It would encompass all kinds of environmental concerns, because when you say foster a sustainable transportation system, to me, the sustainable is modifying the transportation system. It's not talking about fostering sustainability for the whole community as in a broader picture. It's just talking about making it for the transportation system itself, that it continues and works, but not the whole community.
So Mickey, did you have, I thought you said the actual, what the goal might be, something, did you like?
I didn't
goal
name a title, sorry. I
thought
was just
you
saying,
said-
are we gonna have an environmental goal?
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah,
sure
right.
that the folks here could come up with an appropriate title.
I'd say environmental justice, but we've already used that phrase.
It's actually not correct to say environmental justice because we wouldn't be just addressing environmental justice here. So it
For more
would,
reasons,
it's
for 2
more of
reasons.
a environmental protection or conservation.
Preservation and protection.
Yeah, conservation.
And protection.
So I would suggest that people go to the Oregon government TSP update and look at their goals. And let me read for you what they've got. Planning for climate change. Addressing how Oregon's transportation plan can reduce statewide carbon emissions. Alleviating congestion, identifying ways to alleviate congestion both in urban and more rural areas that draw heavy tourism. I don't know why we don't just use that language somewhere in one of these goals. I'm sorry?
I said 5.1. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, 5 point. Yeah. Yeah, it's at Oregon/planning/pages/Oregon Transportation Plan Update. It's new this year, I think, or last year.
Okay, so what I'll try to do with Eddie is incorporate those 4.1 through 5 in along with what we're hearing into goal 5 and where it might fall within 2.
Another area, I think it would be appropriate for us to again, talk about the environmental justice component here as a goal. Look for opportunities to serve underprivileged or disadvantaged.
Yeah.
That's got to be in.
Like we had mentioned.
Hey, Charles, you're still mic'd up.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty important piece for this whole thing, and we ought to have it as a goal.
And I do see that's kind of hit a little bit on page 39, the evaluation criteria. So it looks like, again, as Eddie was saying, it's just a matter of maybe elevating the language a little bit, but I think it's there.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else here? With the general policies.
Just a question on that. Are they policies or are they options? They're not really policies, they're options that you just repeat in the policy section, what we lay out further. So I do object to calling them policies because they're not. They're simply menu options. If you look at them, except for the first set of policies. Let's see, I gotta go back to my planning.
So Mike, to your point about them being options, I don't think that's totally off. And the reason I say that is because some of these are a bit more directive, but I think the idea is that when the city, so, say 5 years from now, there's a project on the docket and y'all are debating whether or not to move forward with it or how to move forward with it. The idea is that these policies will help inform that decision-making and conversation so you can make the best decision possible and the best recommendation to the city council. So it's not like these are laws, they're not regulations, but they are policies that the city is agreeing to generally uphold to help shape the transportation system moving forward. So they're options in a sense, but they're really meant to be flexible guidance.
Here's my objection, Eddie, and we can talk about it. I through this whole thing, I've avoided anything that sounds like a mandate. Any language that sounds to me like a mandate that can be used in 5 to 10 years time that says, well, look, it says we can do this. Then I want to avoid that.
Well,
again, that has been the centerpiece of our discussion since we started. And we agreed that they're really menu options. So, maybe they're more than options, but they're certainly not policies in the sense that city manager in 10 years time can take this up to city council and say, well, look, it's already been approved. So why are we worried about it? So call it something different than policies and I'm happy.
I'm not following the concern because I thought the options were what happened in section 4 when we have very specific projects.
In section 3.
So in section 3, I feel like what I'm seeing is the city shall work with Clatsop County, Sunset Empire, Tillamook. That's pretty broad. It's too broad to be one of our options. So
automobile usage policy, the city may implement 3- and 4-way stops at intersections. The city may implement many roundabouts at intersections. I get your next one, Clatsop County.
Yeah, you're right. You could try to find another word for it, but really the options come in section 4 when we get the really specific projects. So
yeah. So I guess I have two things to add to this, Mike. So the first being that, we want to provide as much flexibility as possible with this plan. And I do think it's extremely flexible, especially if you compare it to some of the other TSPs in the state that are very direct in saying, community shall build bike lanes on this street in 5 years' time. I mean, there's nothing like that in the TSP. It's very flexible, and the specific options that would move forward can change. They're written in such a way where they can be modified according to the community's priorities, what the city council thinks, et cetera, et cetera. But I also think that if you remove if you remove all of the directive language from the TSP, then it really just becomes a document without a lot of teeth, without much ability to really guide the transportation system in the future, and it kind of renders it a little bit ineffective. So I think there needs to be a balance between what we're saying as being an option and what is saying and what is actually a guidance or language that guides decision making in the future. I think that
Why don't we just change it to general guidance then and let it go at that?
I guess I would just need to check with Michael on that. It would be pretty unusual to have a TSP without policies. But if it's really just the word policies that's bothering you.
No, I like the word policies with respect to 3.2.1. It's everything from 3.2.2 on.
I see. Yeah, I could talk to Michael about that, or Michael, if you're still on, I don't know if you have any insight on this.
So just so I make sure I'm following here, I'm 3.2, page 32. Is that?
Yeah, page 32, Michael.
Okay. And so, the concern is that it's like too prescriptive by having a shall versus a may, or
No,
it says may as opposed. It says may currently. So I think the concern is that it feels too much like a directive because it's already been decided that the city can do these things. But yeah, I guess my retort to Mike was that if these policies aren't in place, then you really don't have any basis to implement any of the recommendations in the TSP if the community wanted to. So
To be honest, some of these policies we would like to be implemented. So, we could throw out the baby with the bathwater by saying we need flexibility. But when I look at these, some of these are things I would want to be sure the city did do as it implemented individual projects. So I think let's remember that there's a double-edged sword there, perhaps. And I also want to inject a moment of humility here for all of us. I am very aware that I'm doing the same thing, but we need to remember how much has gone into this and how much community involvement went into building it. Eddie, I really took your point well earlier that we are the icing on the cake. And I think it's very, very important that we don't play God with this and think that we know better than the community members who were part of the steering committee and who really helped form this, the large amount of work and data that has gone into forming the entire plan. So as much as I'm ready to dive in and talk about changes, let's all take a moment to just realize we don't necessarily know better than all the people who've been working on this for the last 2+ years.
No, you're right. And I'm not saying rewrite it. I'm simply saying call them guidelines instead of policies and leave the language the way it is.
So I would just add that the TSP is, in essence, a transportation system plan, in essence, is a policy document at its core. That's
right.
what it functions. It has projects and programs identified to the extent that it might not drill down to specific alignment of a trail or something like that. It will recommend a refinement effort. I mean, and that's where a TSP lives. And so when you take away that policy component, what is in the city's toolkit to as enact policy levers to craft ordinances that then implement these policies.
Section 3.2.1, Mike, it's the general policies, those are toolkit, right? Section 3.2.2, where we get down to specific recommendations, calling them policies, they're not strict, they're not truly policies. To say that the city may implement 3 to 4-way stops at intersections along Hemlock Street to address vehicle delay and pedestrian safety, I agree with the concept, but it's not a policy, it's a recommendation.
So, Mike, could you explain more? Let's use that one as an example. So the city may implement 3 and 4-way stops. Like, how is that not a policy in your mind? Because I don't think I'm really following, to be honest. I think if it was a recommendation, it would say.
Let me address it a different way. Again, there is, you guys have talked to a lot of people. I've had a lot of people talking in my ear.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people talking in my ear are afraid of a city council or a city manager taking this and saying, and I know we've written the language to prevent it, but saying, well, you know, we've already talked about it. It's our policy that we're going to do this. And the debate goes away. Then it's a matter of, are we going to do it or not, right?
But why are we listening to the people in your ear if we've prevented exactly what you just said? If we've taken the power away from the city manager so that the people chirping in your ear, which are irrelevant and holding up all of this discussion, I guess I just don't see the point in continuing to listen to the people in your ear.
Go ahead, Aaron, and go tell them that, okay?
We're on this commission to tell them. It's our job.
I'm not here to tell anybody anything.
It's our mission to vote this plan in or out.
And I'm telling you,
we can sit
that
here
I
and
would
debate
like
the
to
word
change.
policy, whether it's a policy document or not. But changing the word policy, Mike, is exactly rewriting it. A minute ago, you agreed with Mickey that we shouldn't rewrite it, but yet that we should get rid of the word policy. Well,
I didn't agree with anything, Aaron. I said I understand the sentiment, and I'm very humble about it.
Let's jump in. Let's take a pause here for a minute, guys, and hear from our city manager for a minute. Go ahead.
For the record, Bruce St. Dennis, city manager. The situation that a city manager would go ahead and say, well, I'm going to go ahead and do this is not possible under our charter. The city manager has no ability to, the whole thing revolves around the budget. That's the most important policy document that the council puts together. If the money is not in the budget, there is no money to do a project. And there is a tremendous amount. I mean, look at some of the projects we're working on now. There's an awful lot of public comment allowed during those things. People may not come here. People may not be paying attention. But, we have public hearings, we have meetings, we have special workshops on issues, and, nobody shows up. So it's not possible to do what you're talking about or what your concerns are based on our charter.
I've had experience where that's not true, Bruce.
I would like to know how that was done.
I take it offline with you, but I have been involved in a situation where that is exactly false. That the city has done something that they weren't authorized to do and told us that they had the authority to do it. So if you want to have that discussion offline, we'll do it.
No, well, I think it's important because if you're raising the point that the discussion happened here, so everybody can hear your example. I mean, I can only tell you what the charter says. I can point to every project that's happened in my 5 years and show you the process that it's gone through. And so I'm not sure,
Okay, then it opens up another can of worms, and I'm happy to do it. There is a wetland over here that the city undertook to try to drain on behalf of the developer. No authority to do it. Went ahead, it only got stopped because a citizen happened to see you doing it. Now,
that water was being taken off a piece of property that we were, the water that we had was flowing onto.
And it was permitted when it was done. And the code clearly says that, you can do it. And any obligation on your part was simply a favor you were doing for the developer. There was no obligation.
We were doing what was required. And I had plenty of conversations with Karen and with Jeff. We were doing what was required. Jan, could you please let me finish?
Go right ahead.
Thank you very much. That we were doing what was required in terms of the water that we were discharging onto someone else's property. I don't know if that was of any benefit to the contractor or not. We certainly did not do anything to try to go ahead and benefit a contractor on this. As a matter of fact, we had a lot of discussion about, whether or not should this go now or should it go later? We had a responsibility to go ahead and, yes, we did. We
have that responsibility, and I can point you to the code sections that say it.
Okay, I can point to the sections where it said that we did. But even with that, that is an operational project where we're trying to move water from one location to another. It's very different than what you're talking about with the transportation system, where it's going to require significant funding, those sort of things. I think that, yes, I would probably be able to come up with some things similar to the one that you just brought up. But I can tell you, we had conversations. It was more of a concern about the optics, if we did what if there was no project, if we had done what we were talking about, it would be of no consequence. We weren't helping any developers, anything. Now, if somebody wants to tie it and say that because the city took this particular action, that we were helping a developer, if it did help the developer, it was never our intention. And in particular, we're trying to avoid the optic. So a small project like that, you can take that as an example. I don't think that you're correct in your or evaluating what our intentions were, but we're not talking about something as small as that. You're talking about major projects that are in here. I can't go ahead and do that. Sit down with Karen or Jeff and go ahead and make a four-way stop in some location, or build, I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. It's all going to go into the budget. It's the citizens' budget. I wish that people would pay more attention to it.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to drag it down.
just for instance,
Let's just skip it.
the last transportation project, you said the four-way stop down at Warren Way. That had many DRB meetings. It had many review meetings. I think the Parks and I don't know if Parks and Rec, but that went many public meetings.
I withdraw my comment. I don't want to have this discussion with you guys right now.
Well,
I would like to talk to you offline because I have receipts, Bruce. And I want to talk to you offline.
okay, and I would like to do that. But my point is still that if you have something that is big enough that it's in the TSP, or if it's in the water or wastewater master plan, that is something that's going to go through a great deal of scrutiny, or at least the opportunity for scrutiny, because people don't always show up to talk about it. We publish things in advance. So that's my only point. And I
withdraw my comment.
Okay, but I appreciate your hearing me out, Mike.
Hey, Bruce, before you jump out, just to kind of in summary. So I'm just taking 3.2.1, city may implement, and this may address your concern, Mike. The city may implement 3- and 4-way stops. So the city's process, if they do want to implement a 3- or 4-way stop, such as at Warren Way, it is proposed as a budget item. That budget item is discussed at a city council meeting. The public has the opportunity to come to that meeting and listen to what is in the budget, what is being presented to them for the upcoming year. And that would be their time to comment on any of these projects that you have proposed for the upcoming year.
Yes, but that's not the only time.
Okay, what are the other times?
The other times is like
Public Works or DRB, or there's plenty of other, depending on the certain projects, depending on who those plan reviews go through, according to code. So you're covered by those.
But I would also like, and I think that most managers would do this, but I would always do it. Before we are going to go ahead and implement a 3- or 4-way stop, I would require that there be an engineering study done, because you can make things worse. You can create liability. And so somebody might say, well, why don't you just go ahead and do this and everything will be fixed. We get that all the time at the corner of Sunset. But that there would be an engineering study. The engineering study would have to be funded. The engineering study would be brought to the council for them to review. Council would go ahead and make a decision, and then they would direct staff on what to do to implement the project. But we're not going to go out and put another stop sign, or 2 stop signs at Sunset, not without that kind of a process.
It's going through council.
We kind of addressed it with the preliminary language. I just was trying to make it consistent. I withdraw my comment.
Okay. Are there any other?
Thank you.
Thank you. On the general policy section, are there any other concerns?
Just anything that we lose from section 4, if we lose it, when you're creating section 5, the goal 5.
Anything that doesn't make that transition.
Position should go in the general policies.
Yeah.
I don't feel as strongly.
Well, are you saying that anything in the new goal 5, that we're talking about the environmental protection and preservation goal, that you're not seeing enough that reflects back on that goal in the general policies?
Are you asking me? No,
When I rewrote section 4, and I don't think we're going to do that anymore. I looked at these objectives, Lisa, under goal 4,
page 31. And I thought, his goals are not really measurable and they're kind of squishy and feel good. And I tried to put something in that was a little harder, that reflected the balance between the resident and the visitor. But those objectives, 4.1, 4.2, 4.34, and 5 that are presently in the plan under section 31 are very good policy statements that I support. They're simply not really well written as goals. So what I was suggesting is that if any of that falls out, as Jeff is creating a section 5 or a goal 5, that he might consider putting some of that language into the general policies.
I see, under section 5 of the general policies.
Hmm.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
I don't feel as strongly about this language in 3.2.2 as some people on this commission and people I've heard from, but I do want to bring it up. 3.2.22, the city may implement mini roundabouts at intersections along Hemlock Street to address vehicle delay and pedestrian safety. A number of people have said, you don't even want that in there. Is that still?
I thought we voted that out last time.
Did we vote it out? Okay, I have a cross through it, but I want to make sure.
We voted it out last time. It should come out. Anything concerning roundabouts.
Let's make sure that's out.
Hey, just a quick question on 3.2.3. Did anybody ever think about what we do with Ocean Avenue between, over there on the presidentials? Why would we maintain a road there when there's one house that needs that access and we can deal with them as a cul-de-sac?
Oh, along which part of?
Right over here on, we got people walking along Ocean over here. And the only people that use that road are the people who want to look at the ocean.
This Ocean Avenue?
Right out here.
From Jackson.
The presidentials?
From Jackson all the way down through Adams and to Washington?
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a few more than just one person.
Yes, there's one home that has a driveway that needs that access.
But all of these here, if you look, are access their properties through there.
Through the back. Through the back. They all have back access. I'm just asking why we didn't.
I mean, I don't know. I've never heard that. I've never heard that brought up before.
I just thought as a walking trail, it's a heck of a lot better than perhaps cutting down trees through the forest preserve.
Well, I think if it wasn't Randy or some, there have been comments to not to do away with driving, but to emphasize a better walking, biking kind of route through there.
Okay.
So that's been brought up, and I think that's a good point.
Okay, I'll try it. I want to say.
Other comments in section 3? We're going to leave the scooter share, micro transit.
What did we decide on that? I don't think we voted on that, did we?
No, we talked about it, and I believe Jeff didn't feel we needed to because the city council was going to vote an ordinance, but I still think we should eliminate it in the plan.
Wrote the ordinance.
Right.
It's going to the work session on this month.
What's the ordinance? What's the substance?
So it's to not allow rentals of scooters or any, what we call it, emerging mobility devices, like those mono wheels and other things like that. So not allow those as rentals onto public streets or right of ways or trails. And so I drafted that language, but then to manage those that are individually owned. So that's, that was my reason to not get rid of it, because we want to have language that, or for policies about that and ordinances about the rental portion, but also managing those that are individually owned.
So why not take it out, Jeff? I mean, if we're not going to have that, it does talk about rent, private micro transit services such as bike or scooter share. If it's not something, if we're gonna do an ordinance to get rid of it, then it shouldn't be in here either.
Unless we specify that we're talking about individual use.
But that's not what 4 says. It's not talking about individuals.
And so where are you, Lisa, what page are you on there?
I'm on page 35, number 4. Which is under the transit and transit supportive policies 3.2.4. Number 4 on
Yeah,
page.
it really doesn't fit anymore.
Unless you consider the ordinance the proactive policy that's being referred to here.
I mean, that's what I would suggest. That's what we're doing right now. So,
But this is a document to go out and get funding for something that we're not going to do.
no, we're doing it. That's what I'm saying.
I thought we were not going to allow private vendors.
We aren't.
So, maybe just take the word proactive out and just say policies. For me, I think that would work.
And take out services too, because that sounds to me like somebody offering the rental.
Or
I'm not trying
just
to
take out private microtransit services and put in alternatives, alternative means of transportation.
Yeah.
And take out before they begin operating in the city, because in fact, the whole paragraph doesn't make sense to keep it in, except maybe the city shall develop and adopt proactive policies and regulations for alternative means of transportation, and have that be the whole thing for number 4.
Okay. Okay.
So Lisa, can you restate what you just said?
The city shall develop and adopt proactive policies and regulations for alternative means of transportation.
Thank you.
Private or individual.
Yeah, I like individual. Yeah.
Individual means of transportation. So if I had a scooter and I wanted to, I can't even picture that, but anyway, so,
Yeah, I think that's a great way to address that.
and then period.
Anything else in this section?
There was something, is there anything about, I can't remember, isn't there anything about access to Hemlock in this section? Where would that be? I saw it and I can't remember where I saw it. Something about the idea of attempting not to increase private accesses off of Hemlock Avenue.
Yeah, where would that be? I thought I saw it too, Lisa.
And I don't know where it showed up. I've been looking through this section for it. I should have put a big sticky on it or something, but I can't seem to find it in 3.2 anywhere under.
This is Charles. Didn't that come up in the last meeting in connection with the wetland? And there was discussion about, they would have to have a drive coming on the Hemlock. And I think we already have something in the code or something in somewhere that says trying to minimize private drives off Hemlock.
But I think you're right, Charles, but I thought it would be good for it to be included in the transportation plan somewhere as well, since this is a transportation plan.
Yeah, I agree. And under let's see, automobile policy.
Yeah, we could put it under automobile user policy.
Under which, Jeff?
Under that 3.2.2 on page 33, we could just put it under automobile policies.
Yeah. Automobile user policies,
Uh-huh.
something about the city minimizing any new accesses to Hemlock. I don't know, this isn't,
Yeah,
that's not,
there's
that's terrible
something,
language, but you know, something to that effect.
yeah, as Charles said, there is language already in the code about that, so I'll just see what that is and make it, just that further it here, in other words.
That'd be great. Okay. So you think that would go well under 3.2.2?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. We might run into it later on in this too, because I just remember seeing it, but I don't remember where.
Seems like we should spend some time on 3.3 evaluation criteria.
Oh. Yeah.
See, this is where, if you want to get really detailed, you can spend forever on this
I
thing.
know, it's-
Yeah, again, I think they're a little squishy, and I think what they're trying to do is if you have a goal, you should be able to measure it and determine whether you're successful. I'm not sure we can ever do that with some of these.
Well, we do have professional consultants. We've given them ideas for new language and even a new goal. What if we let them come back with suggestions that fit the rearrangement we did?
Yeah, good idea.
Eddie, you game for that?
Absolutely.
Great. Just wanted to.
And then we can reprint another whole transportation.
Right.
Another 100 trees. I know.
At least it's not as big as Seasides.
That's true.
Okay, so we're coming back to this 3.3, is that right?
Right.
Okay. That takes us to 4, unless anybody has anything else in 3.
No.
Do we want to jump into 4 right now? We're an hour and a half in, and this one is probably the most, at least in my view, the most time consuming.
Yeah.
So it is to see what we can do and keep moving.
You want to just keep going? Agree, everybody?
Can we just agree that wherever we see roundabouts and
bet we can get
the stuff we voted out, it'll just come out?
Yep. All right, let's jumping in.
Well, on page 42, there's R4. So R4C, mini roundabout, so that's out. And also R5B would come out
Mhm.
on page 42.
Yeah.
Yep, and I'll just make a word search for those and like those things.
And folks, just to catch me up, so I think this must have been discussed at the last meeting. So the move was to essentially remove all the mini roundabout recommendations. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jeff, I have had a number of questions about the cost of the, is it 4-way down there? Was that, I mean, it's the only baseline I have. I mean, this stuff doesn't, in terms of just a cost estimate, which I'm not sure how useful it is. I mean, we've got a 20-year plan here.
Yeah, and I don't think you can compare those because we re-engineered the intersection. We realigned it. It's a totally different intersection. These are going to be 4-way stops, and what the price that's suggested is putting 4-way stop signs or 3-way stop signs up on streets that we're not going to be really rejiggering the intersection.
How can that cost $7,000?
It didn't. It costs 136 or something like that.
How can what they're proposing cost 7,000 versus what?
I thought I saw a 7.
Yeah, it is 7,000, but that's simply just putting up stop signs, pretty much.
I'll put them up for less.
Yeah.
That just really caught, I thought, how could that cost so much? But
I don't want to derail the conversation too much, but while we're discussing, I'd be happy to pull up the cost estimates and share the line items that go into that. I know that it's pretty straightforward. It's essentially the materials, the labor, And then I think there's some flagging associated with that and some other kind of temporary stuff that goes into putting them up. But if folks are interested, I'd be happy to pull that up.
How about in the interest of keeping us moving, we focus on some of the bigger ticket items?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to make a comment.
So my question is on R7, which is an expensive item, R7A and B. So which one, I'm not sure, I'm confused now about which one we were going to try first at the city. Maybe somebody from the city can answer that. Which one was the one that that anybody had an inkling that we were going to try first, the couplet or the pedestrian plaza?
Well, I think that you can, the near one is the Hemlock Pedestrian Plaza, try the plaza first, just like that's a suggested priority. So I'm sure they'll have feedback on that at the city council.
Right. Well, how come that's so expensive? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I don't know. Eddie might have more than I do on that one.
Yeah, so that's another one where I'd have to go and look at the specific line items that our engineer came up with, but it's a similar thing. So I think it assumes some temporary concrete diverters to limit traffic in the area where we would install the plaza. I think it assumes some streetscaping elements, labor, temporary flagging, striping, signage, etc. So it adds up. And then there are surely some other costs that I'm not thinking about because again, I didn't develop the estimates, but really for all of for the entire commission, the cost estimates. Jeff, have we published those on the web anywhere? If not, at a minimum, we should share them with the commission so folks can actually go through.
Yeah,
the line items.
We can check the TSP site, and then if it's not up there, we'll be happy to post those.
Well, I understand. I'm conflicted on these costs. I think it's important to have the conversation around why one intersection is 7,000 and why one is much more expensive to put stop signs. But conversely, I think, especially in a world where costs are moving as quickly as they are, we have a 20-year plan.
Right.
This just seems like it sets us up for a bunch of contention.
What do you call it? You call it budgetary when you do a WAG, wild ass guess? I mean, I know it's not that, Eddie, I'm sorry. But I hate to propose alternative language, but
Is it necessary to have these costs in here? I mean, again, I appreciate them, but this is our, go ahead.
Okay. That's a good point. And one of the issues that we have, for example, with our wastewater master plan is that those were the costs as of 2017. We can't project them because we don't know when they're going to be done. So you could potentially do an update on all of the costs if it was going to be done the next year. But that's not going to happen. So when you're putting in costs, the way we look at it, you get the 2017 or you get the 2022 cost. And then if we're going to do it in 8 years, then we do a cost estimate, with an update, or else if it requires engineering, the engineers would come in and do the update on it. But it's really hard because, again, all of those prices that you got, assuming you're going to do it tomorrow.
Right.
And we're not.
So we could just put a footnote, an asterisk on all these and say, this is just a budgetary estimates, costs will vary. Why don't we just do that?
Yeah.
And then
Projected costs.
citizens won't get angry with us when we wildly undershot the budget.
Right.
So I would love just for my own curiosity, just one of these things, like the Hemlock Pedestrian Plaza 167. I'd just love to see the numbers. I'm just very curious to give us, how when you see a hospital bill and you see what you paid for the bandage and you see what you paid for an aspirin. I'm just curious. Not all of them, just that particular one. I would love to see what the engineers say, how much things cost, because I would understand it more if I
Yeah.
have some idea.
We'll be happy. We'll post those and then we'll also, I just refer you to page 41 because it does talk about these order magnitude costs were developed without detailed designs, yada, yada. But, it talks about the scales there that they're working
Just
with.
like to see a number by stuff, just for one of them at least. To get an idea of where is it labor that's so expensive? Is it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Commissioner Kerr, I'm taking a quick look at the general template that was used for these, and they're based on unit costs. So basically, it's just like you described. It's like the aspirin and the bandage and everything else, and those are averaged for the industry and then adjusted for the region. And then there's a variety of buckets that they fall into. So there's the sort of the raw materials, so the signage and the bollards, et cetera, striping, paint. And then there's additional construction costs. So that would be like construction surveying, temporary traffic control, erosion control, contingency, et cetera. There's anticipated additional costs of coordination for business access and emergency vehicles, and then the cost of engineering. So, ostensibly there would be some costs associated with having somebody actually develop a simple diagram that shows precisely where if we're talking about stop signs, for example, where the stop signs are going to go. So that all kind of rolls up into something that probably feels a little bit bloated, but to the point of many that have spoken just now, I think that they really are just planning estimates, and they're not that detailed because they don't account for inflation and the future cost of construction. So I think the recommendation to just add that language very prominently in a few different places is a good call.
And then Eddie, while we're at it, when you go and put the funding gap recommendations and all that stuff, you should make it very prominent there too, okay?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And the funding gap recommendation is also sort of a crude calculation. So we basically just looked at the average revenues that the city was able to generate over the last 5 years, came up with a ballpark figure, multiplied it by 20. So it's very crude math. So I think it does deserve that level of clarification as well. Good point, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that level of clarification is good there. I mean, I don't know how you fix that because basically it's a promise. You guys can afford this. And the reality is we don't know. So yeah, at the very least, that kind of disclaimer, but you might want to rework that whole section a little bit to make it clear that we don't really know what it's going to cost or whether we'll have the money.
Yeah, I think that's very fair.
And is it absolutely necessary to have a dollar amount? Could you prioritize low, medium, high, have some kind of category? Anytime you get into specific numbers, it's a recipe for.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could do that. Something that we've seen in other plans is sort of it's what we did with some of the recommendations that were a little bit harder to pin down, where you essentially say, hey, if it's $1 sign, it's like under $50,000. If it's 2, it's 100 and over, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you could set up some ranges and use some simple symbology to communicate the basic idea. And then maybe just provide the actual cost estimates to the city as a deliverable that wasn't, I think it's fine to make it publicly available, but I think.
Or an appendix or something, yeah.
Yeah, an appendix or something like that. That's a good idea.
Okay. Anything else going through these costs?
C9 on page 44, the top of 44, enhanced crossing at Hemlock Street between Coos Street and Oakford Street. I guess maybe I missed it somewhere in here. Why?
44.
Why do we need a crossing there? There must be a reason. Is that because of something to do with the bike trail, or what's the reason for that?
Yeah, I don't think that one was driven by the traffic analysis per se. I think it was more about, so some of these were driven by the network consideration. So the idea being that you want to have an interconnected network where people can comfortably walk through the entire city. And that, I think that one emerged as just kind of a point at which there wasn't a protected crossing currently, and there could, and some protection could benefit walkers.
Is that the one that's over at Cannon Beach Academy?
Yeah, that's the Cannon Beach Academy one.
It's a
Oh,
school
so-
crossing.
So that's,
Yeah, there's-
that's right.
School crossing, yeah. Good catch, Mickey.
That makes sense if it's a school crossing. I didn't realize that's, you sure that Ilford and
Yeah. Yep,
Yep.
where they, okay.
see it right here. All right, are you guys sharing my screen or not?
No, sorry.
Here we
We're
go.
not ignoring you, but we're not.
There we go.
Okay. Oh, I see, yeah. So I would put that in, I mean, so people understand what it is. Just write enhanced crossing for enhanced or school crossing at Hemlock between Coos and Ophir. So everybody has an understanding of why, because it's, you know, it's a high ticket item. It's expensive. So if people understand it's a school crossing, then it's, you know, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add the rest of the way. I don't know what you guys do.
Anybody else?
Are we at the point where we're talking about the maps?
I think that's where we are now, yeah.
I think we talked last time about just adding a little asterisk that anything shown on these maps is for illustrative purposes and is, yeah, just illustrative. Because I know that this is seeing lines on the map has certainly activated certain members of the community. So we just want to make it clear that anywhere we need to, anytime a map shows up, maybe we just keep adding the asterisk, illustrative
Good.
purposes only.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good. Yeah.
I'd like to go back to page 44 before we go to the maps. ET1 and ET2 would be taken out. On page 44, emerging transportation technologies and improvements. Policies.
The ET1, ET2 seems like it could stay, Lisa. We are adopting a policy.
I agree, get rid of one, yeah.
Seems
And
like
I
one.
think,
Yeah, we
let's-
will already have done that before this is done.
what if we say supportive of bike shares or bicycle opportunities? So take the scooter out, but we would really like to support bike options. I mean, to me, that's one of the really important pieces of this TSP. If we're saying get cars off the road, we need to provide bikes to people who can use them. And so
Just
I would
take
like to see
scooter
that.
out. Just take scooter out, yeah.
Right.
Okay, good. I mean,
Oh, so take scooter out of which one?
ET2
Two.
and
1 and 2.
1 and 2.
Okay.
Okay. Moving to 4.2, unless there's anything on the maps, anything more on the maps?
No, I think as long as we put the disclaimer
Yeah.
on the maps.
Roadway system plan.
So is the idea at page 59 and onward with the roundabouts that is completely removed, all of that? Or do we say not suggested, but this was an alternative? Because it looks like there was a lot of effort put into this, and I would guess a fair amount of discussion from the steering committee.
I think that we're getting rid of the roundabouts because.
Yeah, I
it's-
agree. I think it's confusing to leave it in.
I don't
And I'll
think we
just,
take it out in one place and put it in another, leave it in another. It's 52, page 52, R4C. The $924,000 long Again, R5B, again, is another mini roundabout. If we're taking them out, we're taking them out.
Yeah, and I'll just reiterate that it'll be a strike-through version so that you're recommending removal, but the city council will see the document with the mini roundabout in it. It's just struck through so that they can see how your recommended changes of the
Yeah, we're
document.
not making the changes, we're just recommending.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's kind of a big one. I think we should hear from everybody on that. Are we okay striking many roundabouts?
Yes.
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 Aaron?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right, especially with just the strike through language, I think that's a yes with me also.
Look how much money we just saved.
Almost $2 million.
Any objections to the language around the all, or not objections, any comments, objections or other around always stop controls, page 56?
No.
No.
Six. Only thing I would say is, and I'm of course deferring to the experts on this. I just think that three-way stop on Hemlock and Sunset, or the two stop signs and the traffic going through, south on Hemlock, I think it's going to be a mess. Because it'll be almost impossible to turn left going south off of Hemlock onto Sunset. Or to turn, yeah, it's going to be incredibly difficult. But, you know, I'm not a traffic study person. I'm a layman. So I'm just saying, I don't see how, I personally can't see how it's going to work, but, you know.
And that's why we will have consultants and professionals that can determine that.
You know, I like those Vegas intersections where you get those big bridges that go to the street and then they have bars on every corner.
I can see that fitting into the village for sure.
Yeah, right.
Like that here?
I will add that while we can certainly provide the traffic analysis for anyone that's interested in including the modeled turning operations that show that this concept would work, I think this is the kind of improvement that would certainly require some additional traffic analysis before being implemented. So I would just, you know, reiterate the point that's been made already, that for some of these, especially for ones that would change traffic operations in a substantial way, I think you would need to hire a consultant or have some kind of a traffic engineer go out there and actually take a look at it, run some fresh numbers, and just make sure that this is a good investment for the city. So at least when we did the analysis, it looked good, but you know, the city might not be ready to do it for another 10 years or so. So I think it's definitely going to require some additional study.
No, I'm just was curious why you didn't have it be, you know, stopping all ways, going south and north, and the southbound. Okay, well, there's no use going into it now. It just didn't make sense to me, but that's fine. I don't care. It's fine.
Okay.
Downtown corridor improvements, any comments through there?
I think it's really interesting to see how the experiment works with the pedestrian plaza. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it'll be real interesting to see.
Yeah.
That ocean directing, can you make sure it floats down?
Yeah, I will say that of all the things that we've brought to light throughout this process and had community conversations about, I think the openness to testing the plaza and couplet was the thing that surprised me the most, because it to me it seemed like something that might be dead in the water just because it's so different than what's in the city today. But I think it really is just a testament to the residents being open to new ideas and trying to do something a little bit differently. And if it works, it could be great. We had lots of folks from on the public side when we did the surveys and such, really get excited about the plaza concept. It sounds like it could be kind of a European community center or something like that, which could be really cool and unique for Cannon Beach. So probably the most fun thing in the TSP, I would say.
Yeah.
There's nothing else there. How about the 4.3?
So would this be where, Clay, when you mentioned, is there a way to send revenue toward helping those who can't afford parking or transportation? Would this be the place that you're envisioning adding a point about that?
Seems like the place, yes.
And Clay, I think the language could be pretty general, but I think the point is well taken that, any revenues collected from a paid parking program should go back into some kind of program, whether it's additional transit service or transit subsidy, whatever it may be, but something related to transportation and supporting people of, higher need. I think that's a great recommendation.
Yeah, I think not only does it help serve some of the goals of this plan we're devising, but it's also going to deflect some of the negative press we get for charging for parking. That we're, hey, it's not for free. We got to pay for this and help.
Recording in progress. That all it takes?
Good heavens.
Any other additions in there?
Never mind.
I don't know, what is that, surface?
Yeah. I was trying to get on your website, on your feed.
Implementation considerations. Do we want to talk about
Have some?
No, I just didn't know how, I was sitting there
It ain't
panicking
happening.
because I just wanted to see what you were sharing.
You want to see? I
No,
can
that's
share with
okay.
them.
No, I got all that. I was just seeing where Jeff was over here.
Okay.
Have we been able to turn down the volume when staff is using their computers?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
That might
You can do.
You mean if I hit, I can't hit mute on that, can I? But,
Yeah, no,
Even if you turn your speaker, if you turn it off.
okay,
Like
yeah,
that, because what's happening is it's on you.
got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
And many talents.
Good job, Bruce.
How many times did I sit here? Thank you.
Implementation considerations, 431, page 72. I mean, does that mean nothing, or does that mean it's people's minds are fading?
I have nothing left after.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah,
You're fine with it?
yeah.
Fine with it?
Yeah.
Okay. We're sneaking up on 8 o'clock here. We are also sneaking up on getting through quite a bit, maybe as much as I've had some coffee tonight. I can go a little longer. I don't know how long you guys all want to go. We talked about going till 8 o'clock, but we could push that and try to.
Well, you also have some people who want to speak, I believe.
We're
so-
not going to lose that. Thank you, Lisa.
And I
Absolutely
thought,
not.
Jeff, you had a different agenda item too to catch us up on the code audit also, right? Or do you?
I was just gonna update. Yeah, but
I would love to get some edits back. Let's just see if we're skipping anything.
What if we give it 15 more minutes and see if we can just work through, we're not finding a lot here. Let's see if in 15 minutes we can pinpoint what's left, and then we can take some public comment and we have time to wrap up.
That sounds good. Nick.
Could we stop and ask each commissioner to identify where they have comments, and then we can just get through them without paging through everything? So I know you have a bunch, right? So just lay them out. And I don't know, Barb has, and Lisa might have some, and we can get them on the table at least.
Well, why don't we go page, just because I've kind of got my little process here. Why don't we go page by page and then
Sure.
well, we'll have covered it that way, but this way I know that we've started at the start
Okay.
and we've come through it. I kind of like
That's
that.
fair enough.
All right, so 4.3.1, we do not have comments.
Uh-uh.
No.
Pedestrian and bicycle system plan 4.4.
No.
I think I'll make the general comment that I really hope, my aspiration is that this plan comes out being strong on promoting means for people to actually get a hold of a bike if they're here visiting. And I know it's in some of these, and I'm just going to comment that anywhere that we can elevate that, that's great to me.
There's a comment on wayfinding, and I don't know if it was a public comment on wayfinding, and whether that's something we should incorporate here, or is that
Finding in terms of
General, getting around the island? Or,
I know what you meant.
island.
What do you mean by wayfinding?
I know where you're from.
I don't know what you mean by wayfinding.
it's like
Talking
just
about
like a
emergency
co-
response?
Coordinated signage system to help people get from point to point is usually how it's described. Yeah. Eddie, any thoughts on where that you think that might go, or where it would be a?
And I'm sorry, I wasn't totally following what the comment was. So I heard wayfinding. What's the?
Just talking about adding some a wayfinding system in the plan for bicycles.
Oh, I see. So I think we include wayfinding in most of the recommendations, but I don't think we talk about a sort of a comprehensive wayfinding system. So I think that could be something that could be added to the general description for the bicycle and pedestrian system. So potentially maybe as a subsection in 4.4, it seems like we could talk about what that actually means and maybe provide a couple of examples so that people know what we're talking about.
I think that'd be helpful. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I will take a note of that.
Yeah, it seems like it would go there under 4.4, 4.4.3, the network. Because there is some signage there in that.
How about these next sections here? We have the multi-use trail from 2nd to Monroe, Spruce pedestrian and bicycle route, the S-curves bypass.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have a couple of things I would like to see. I just a couple concern. Like I've said before, I really think bike paths are great. Does the city pay for, garbage and maintenance and poop boxes and making sure that people aren't camping off the trail, or that, the maintenance in general? I mean, monitoring the trail. Is that a city expense?
Yeah, that would be part of it, Lisa. Yeah.
It would be. And what about impervious surface on the trail? Is that a possibility?
No, I think we've tried to address that with those side paths and that kind of lower impact improvement.
And the tree, and is there something avoiding tree cutting in
Yeah.
the path?
I made a note of that, Lisa, from the last meeting, that when we'll do this draft, I'll put that language in that one section there. I think it's on, I'll find it and here. So yeah, I'll incorporate that into the, I think it's 76 and 77, incorporate that language.
Okay, and then, and you told me last time that Yukon will have to be studied as a, as being a good place for the trail to come out on across Hemlock, just because of the curve there. It's really hard to see oncoming traffic on Hemlock. So I'm sure that would be studied before the end of the bike path, that section of the bike path was built.
Yeah, and Commissioner Kerr, I just wanted to add as well, I think we've heard some smart comments from community members over the last couple of months regarding that Yukon exit. I'm not totally convinced that that's really the right street for a multitude of reasons, and folks in the community have a better sense of that. So I think it might be useful to redraw that map as just saying that, the terminus is going to be in this area, but I do think additional study needs to be done to figure out precisely where it should connect back into. It may be Yukon or it might be a totally different street. And I just don't
Something
think
with good sight lines. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just don't want people to think that we're committed to doing something on Yukon, because we're absolutely not. So my recommendation to the Planning Commission would be, as part of our edits, that we revise that map and just be honest about the fact that we don't really know where the terminus is, but we do know that there's an opportunity for connection in that area, and that it would be determined. Okay.
That'd be great.
Anything else? Anyone else?
Mm-mm.
443 bicycle network.
I'll insert that wayfinding language there, I think.
That would be a great place for that. Any comments on the metrics on page 83?
No.
No.
Maps, same note as before, for illustrative purposes only. Crossings. 444, page 86.
No comment.
Well, I think that, okay, well, the figure 43 and figure 44, I just don't think they fit in with the character of the town at all. I think for a school crossing, all of that's fine. But to start having lit up, first of all, at night, no one's around anyway. The streets are pretty empty at night in downtown. But regardless of that, this looks like it looks like for a much bigger city, much bigger town. I'm not a big fan of the roadway warning lights and the illuminated bollards. I am amused by figure 46. It's kind of adorable, but I mean, the Belisha illuminated pedestrian beacon used in the United Kingdom. Well, I mean, that's cute, but again, I don't think it's something that we really need to see in this town.
So if I could just add some context to that. So of the crossing improvements, there are 11 that we've recommended. And among those, we are only floating the alternative illumination option for 4, one of which being the school, the other one being at Hemlock and Second, which is the highest volume pedestrian crossing in town. And then the other 2 being at Coolidge and Spruce. So, and again, these are options. We're not saying city must build illumination at these places, but I think what we've tried to do kind of in the spirit of that menu is that if there was a need for a higher level of protection, it's really just in a handful of places throughout town. And it may or may not include illumination, but if it did, here are some options out there, not just doing the typical hawk sign, the big mast arm over the street that you would see in bigger cities. I mean, that just seemed pretty inappropriate for Cannon Beach. So we tried to find stuff that was cute, but that would also provide a higher level of protection without looking like Seattle or something like that. So
Right.
I don't know if that makes you feel better, Commissioner Kerr, but.
Well, 46 is cute.
How about illuminated puffins?
Oh, there you go.
Why don't we have disclaimers by those pictures also?
Oh, yeah, we could just put a disclaimer. There you go.
Right.
For illustrative purposes.
Only. That's gonna be our motto.
So that would be on page 87, can do.
Put that on my business card.
Comments on the, good on 89. None? Okay. Maps we talked about. Transit plan.
I'm just assuming with transit that there will have to be a pretty extensive study specifically of transit. And it sounds like there's already some ongoing efforts with Sunset. So to me, I'm willing to trust that this is going to be a subject for a lot more study.
And I would suggest, though, that you guys had talked about, van pools and employee kind of transit strategies, if you want to call it that. That might be one that we add in here.
That's great of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Jeff, I think that relates to the mobility hub concept, which I know there was a question about from a member of the public, but essentially what we're talking about, well, actually backing up a little bit, like I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the majority of the transit recommendations in this section are really just kind of borrowed from the Sunset Empire Transit Master Plan. And again, what we did is we went through those and kind of highlighted the ones that we thought were critical in supporting the broader transportation system plan that we were doing. The novel thing that we included in our plan that was not included in Sunset Empire was this mobility hub concept. And in the context of Cannon Beach, we are certainly not recommending big transit centers. There's not really a need for it, and it just wouldn't make sense anyway. So in Cannon Beach, really what we're talking about is just identifying areas in town, potentially repurposing some on-street or off-street parking to carve out some spaces for those alternative transportation modes that you were mentioning, Commissioner Kerr. So whether it's bicycle share or a van pool, pickup and drop off area, or a designated area for Uber and for Uber and Lyft pickup and drop off in high volume areas, et cetera. It's just one way of further kind of organizing the transportation system and creating designated spaces within the community where people can reliably access alternative transportation options. So I'm just kind of babbling now, but that's kind of the idea behind the transit recommendations overall.
Yeah, and it looks like TS3 speaks to an employee shuttle, but we can put that van pool in another, make that a little broader, I think.
Okay.
Look at
And commissioners, I also wanted to float, not to add not to throw another wrench in the gears, but so TS3 employee shuttle, what Jeff was just talking about.
got your
one of the considerations is could be
The bullet,
implemented.
the first bullet.
Oh, I'm sorry. You guys know where I'm at?
No, we're with you. I was just pointing something out to Clay.
Oh, okay, sorry. So TS3, the second bullet under considerations could be implemented as part of a larger transportation demand management strategy. So I don't believe Cannon Beach has a TDM group. So is that a recommendation that the Planning Commission would support, actually designating a group to help manage these programs in the city? Or is it something that, Jeff, you kind of envision the city continuing to own, at least for the near and medium term?
Yeah, I would say we would, until we get more, I think, feedback on that. How does that fit in, Eddie, with that next section on the 4.6?
Let's see, 4.6. Oh, goodness. Yeah, it's already in there. I forgot that we had a section for this, but yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So we don't mention an organization, because it could be by the city, but I think the idea is that you have sort of a programmatic approach to encouraging people to not drive into downtown, whether they're employees or visitors.
Yeah, which I think TDM3 and some of these are the most important points to a lot of the citizens here right now. And so.
Mm-hmm.
Those are good.
Yeah, and TDM2, folks, is basically underway. So I've been working with the North Coast Tourism Association and Kathy over there, and we're developing brochures. Well, at this point, they're done, but there's brochures for a handful of North Coast communities that share information with visitors on how they can travel car-free. So it's just one of the ways that you can really hopefully make an impact and reduce congestion on the road, minimize pollution, give people better options, take some of the stress away from local residents that have to contend with high vehicle traffic, et cetera. So some of this stuff is already underway in the region.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I would like a total rewrite of 410, the rail plan.
Right.
While you're at it, let's get the airline plan too. Where is the rail plan?
And folks, I know that seems a little silly, but it's just one of the things that is required in the TSP. So we have to state that there's not a rail unless Jeff's going to build one. So.
And no helicopter,
Unfortunately, yeah.
police chief ones.
Changes to 4.7, 4.8. Feeling good about 4.9, 11, 12, 13, all that pretty boilerplate.
Yep.
Okay, 5, implementation and funding strategy.
We already have a comment. Eddie, you were going to take some responsibility to make it clear that we're just guessing here.
I think that's probably my biggest concern.
Yeah, I can ask the guessing disclaimer, and I think the other thing that I can do is I can even obscure the figures a bit more. So even in terms of the transportation revenues, I can, right now it says it's an average of $248,000 per year, but I think we can even say, $250,000, generally speaking, but it's not a reliable figure because it's based on averages, et cetera, et cetera.
Plus, you're going to take out the roundabouts.
Yeah.
Yes. So the numbers themselves will need to be updated according to the revisions and recommendations from you all.
$2 million.
That's right.
Also be sure to have that appendix just so, we do have a estimate for today, but not a part of the plan.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I think similarly for the funding gap and recommendations, section 5.2, I think we'll also have to obscure that a little bit and make it a little bit less precise since these are ballpark figures.
Right. I'd like a little stronger language around the SDCs. I think that should be pretty clear that I don't even want to say may, it's just my opinion. I think we should evaluate this a lot more seriously than the language here suggests.
Jeff, is that something that's being addressed in any meaningful way with the code update right now? I feel like you mentioned something about this.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that is part of it. So
STCs,
Some development charges, anytime a developer comes in, they have to pay for.
That's right.
Oh. Yeah, I had, oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was spaced out there for a minute, but I agree that we have to do that. I would like to see stronger language in here about that as well.
Mhm.
Specific to transportation. We're not talking about, other kinds of STCs. Is it possible to get stronger language for transportation related costs?
Yeah, I think
it's-
so.
We put the shall in there instead of the may.
yeah.
Okay, so 5.2.1.
Yeah, we will. And I think it's been brought up at code audit as well. And so, yeah, we'll definitely, it'll be one of the major things.
Good, but I think that this has to be copacetic with the code audit. So to make them, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It backs it up.
Yeah, and I think Commissioner Kerr, maybe part of the language is really just adding some, again, recognizing that this is a policy document, just adding some support to the current code audit so that when people come back and look at the TSP, it says very clearly that this is a priority for the city and something that they shall pursue in a meaningful way. So yeah, I think I can definitely work with Jeff to add some language in there. And Jeff, since you're in the middle of the code update process, maybe you can provide some insight on the kind of language that would be most instrumental to the city in moving these kinds of funding opportunities forward.
Okay.
As long as you have may around property taxes and bonds, I think we're safe, not shall. Tax increment, a lot of this stuff this is probably why we're putting this in place, this language we're coming into now. And
Right.
I'm not qualified to amend this. I'm assuming this is why we hired you guys, Eddie, to put this language in and help us with these types of funding options.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a classic menu item, right? It's not a requirement. It's not even necessarily a recommendation, but it's a tool that's out there. And Cannon Beach certainly has a coherent core in commercial area that could be used to generate funding for future city improvements. So it's something, I think it's something that deserves its place on the menu, even if the city isn't ready to go after it or doesn't have a lot of experience with it.
Between here and the last few pages, any comments from anybody, any concerns? I don't know. Okay, there's you're on the whole thing, Jeff. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
It's not.
So are we going to save for the future, the whole thing about the adoption of ordinance number 22 dash blank? In other words, at the very end of this, there is before the Common Council of the City of Cannon Beach, whereas, are we going to discuss that part of the document tonight or save it?
think let's come back to that, Lisa. Let's take a look at what we get back, the red line, if you will.
I'm
And
all,
then let's take it and then come back to that language.
that would be great. Okay,
I think that's a good plan.
yeah.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
No.
None? None?
On this.
No.
That worked. Good job.
Good job, team. All right. Jeff, any last comments here?
No,
Okay, so let's take, we will take public comment. We'll limit the comments to 3.
I think Randy had asked to speak, so.
Okay, Randy, we're gonna keep it to 3 minutes or under, please.
I thought, okay. I thought we said 5 at the last time meeting, but maybe I'm wrong.
Three
We can vote on it.
sounds better, much better to me, right?
3. Lisa,
I
you-
vote 3.
3,
3.
5.
5.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa, for being the contrarian there. I appreciate you for that.
4.
Hate that.
4, better yet. All right, 3. Randy, please go ahead. Thank you.
I'm Randy Neal, P.O. Box 1092, Cannon Beach. I applaud your effort, but I also understand that, you know, you guys really probably lack a strong understanding of the underlying technical data and also the detailed inputs that were collected over the last year from the community. You know, I'd resubmitted some of my slides from last month. I think a couple of the key points are, this is really, a lot of this stuff needs to be strategic. A lot of the discussion today was not strategic. Some of the strategic items turned out to be less than enlightening to me. The Hemlock Plaza is a good example. You know, we talked about the cost of it. The reality is that's not the issue. It's, do I want to pull 90 parking spaces away from that? What do I do with the trucks that have to come and load for the businesses for that? What happens with the businesses like Mariner Market, Bruce's, Tom's that have parking on that thing? You know, that whole alignment of downtown needs a real strong review. And I think we're sort of giving it lip service. The other one is, I think, you know, I've tried to make it clear, there's a whole topic around neighborhood right-of-way parking that I think is totally omitted. You know, do we want to max it out? You know, let everybody park everywhere, every whatever? Or is it park one side of the street, not park another side of the street? Is it park one side of the street and have a permit for employees to park on the other side? You know, we talked about shuttles. You know, the reality is we have a shuttle that runs, you know, the trolley that runs in the summer. I had looked at that a long time ago. You know, it averages 800 people in the month of August, pre-COVID, which averages out to like 2 people per hour, which probably peaks at 5 or 6 people per hour. And the reality is it doesn't get the right promotion. It doesn't get the right support. You know, so the whole shuttle needs, you know, an incredible amount of work done to it. And it's the highest priority from the community. It's, you know, we act like we can do something shuttle for employees, but the employee schedule is not going to be something that's very supportable. So like I said, I don't know where to start. I'm very disappointed in the level of strategy that is displayed in this strategic plan. You know, like the levels of crossings, the enhanced you can't really have a 4-way stop without an enhanced crossing.
Randy,
be the people.
We're over 3 minutes. Thank you very much. I think you, as I've said before, appreciate your comments and have considered them. Anyone else?
I'm just gonna plant some seeds. The nurse in me wants to talk about scooters a little bit. So when we talk about scooters, those little ones that go around that we don't want, that people are leave all over the place. But have you included scooters? There's a lot of definition of scooters. Because I went to the bike store and you can get a 3-wheel scooter that's electric. You can get a covered scooter that is electric. And so I don't know if you should block that out because there's other things about scooters besides those.
And on that note, that's part of that discussion we will be having at the work session next month. And also, which will then go to a public hearing process.
Okay.
that's a perfect example of how this works, we'll have a policy, even though we might not like to call it a policy, but anyhow, then we'll have these kind of projects, and then the projects then will then initiate the project, and then they have to go through hearings, and whether it's legislation, whether it's the actual project, so.
Jeff, I think that's next week, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't have the agenda, I can.
Yeah, I think. At least today.
The work
I don't have the
session?
agenda. I think it's separate next week.
Gentlemen, forgive me for interrupting, but we're taking from Deb's time here.
Uh-oh. Anyway, scooters have a lot of definition, and then so think about that. And then Boulder, Colorado has a very successful plaza, if you want to call them. And retail, I sold to retail for years, 10 to 6, okay? So then you have restaurants, if they're open for breakfast, you have that. And then I think it's really important, because I have Protect Cannon Beach, and all these people have been, Eddie, you're on, so you know what all the comments have been, so I've been listening to them. I think it's really important that the businesses are kind of starting to get on board and excited, and because we thought about tying marketing strategy into on the bus, not the bus, but tie in if you spend $50, you'll get free parking or something to that if you do. So marketing strategy to help businesses is going to be really important. And shuttles, making it fun and educational, and paint it, maybe that for the tourists, you could paint puffin on the side and have somebody that tells them about birds on the way downtown. Just make it fun, the shuttle thing, and everybody got all excited about that. Okay, so anyway, there's a lot of really great ideas, and I'm very creative that way, so I'll keep adding planting seeds for you.
Please do, thank you.
Deb.
Anyone else like to speak? Jan, please.
Just quickly, I wanted to say, in practice, what I have experienced, this may be repeating myself, but I don't want you to forget about it, that these master plans in practice seem to be more of a to-do list for the city than a menu. And I've seen it numerous times. That is why I'm very concerned about what goes in the TSP. I would also like you to remember, as you're doing this process, please keep thinking about how we can limit the number of people coming here during our peak season. And I do believe there is still quite a difference in our peak season. And one thing, the water use. We need to really always keep in mind our water is limited here, especially in the summer. So we do have a choice. Please, let's not forget, we can be creative. We can find ways to have everybody come here, but not everybody at the same time. And I guess the last thing, or maybe there's two, the Planning Commission is a key part of this TSP. And we citizens have had a lot of say so far in many ways, maybe not enough in my view, but the Planning Commission is key here. Please do not feel pressured to hurry this along, and please do not be feeling like you need to be a rubber stamp. None of our city committees ever need to be rubber stamps. And I just want to say thank you for caring enough to continue taking your time and your energy to get this TSB right for our community. It's worth every moment that we put into this.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Jan.
And there's no rubber stamps among us.
We saw that.
That comes from the city council.
Would anyone else like to speak? Is anyone on the
Zoom.
I wanted to say the Zoom, but my daughter would mock me. The Twitter. Anyone online tonight would like to speak? No more raised hands, Jeff?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Yay.
With that, we'll close this section. Is there anything for the good of the order?
Are you going to give us an update?
I was just going to say code audit.
Oh, thank you.
We were given a kind of directive to come back with some, first off, you're going to get the full code audit, and then, but also some track 2 amendments or changes for zoning ordinances. And so we've been working and drafting those, at least a first draft of them. And so hopefully we'll have those pretty soon. And they've also, setting the dates and for the next meeting and get that prepared as well.
Jeff, I'm a little concerned about that ORS provision that we discussed in the last meeting. What is it, 19.3073 or something? It's come up once, and I don't think the planning commission is prepared to discuss with an applicant the meaning of that without getting some expert counsel from city attorneys.
Are we talking about needed housing or?
No, about objective standards.
Clear and objective.
Yeah, we need that. And I think for us to evaluate proposals going forward, we're going to need that for the next meeting, right? We're going to need somebody to talk to us and answer questions about, is that an absolute requirement? Is it a presumption? Is there any wiggle worm? Where is the wiggle worm? What about pre-existing conditions? And other things like that, so that we can speak intelligently, because the other side is obviously other people are going to bring in their attorneys.
Yeah, well, we'll have Bill there and I'll have him speak about clear and objective.
I'm not satisfied having a conversation with Bill when their attorney is sitting there listening.
So, are you wanting him to draft a memo on this clear and objective standard?
I want to know what kind of wiggle room we have and where.
Well, I think he will draft a memo on clear and objective. I don't know if he'll put it in wiggle room, but he'll tell you, he can only speak to what, is before him. So I don't know if he knows what your questions are, is I guess.
Well, I would like to deliver them to him, but he's not listening to me. He listens to you.
No, he listens to.
I've asked him. He ignores me. So.
It may have something to do with the forum and making sure it's public.
Yeah.
Well, that's just one person asking an attorney. That's not a meeting.
Except it's the city's attorney.
Yeah. So if you guys have suggestions or whatever that you would like to ask for him to respond to, I would say this is the forum to do that. Bring it up and come to a consensus among you, and then it's the planning commission that would give him direction to draft something up. It's not.
So how do we do that when we're not here? Do you want an open communication on email? Do you want to reserve time at a meeting to have that specific discussion?
So
I think Bill already committed to getting us more information on the clear and objective standard case law. That was my interpretation of what he said he would be delivering.
I agree. If I recall, he's already given me some language that I put in on clear and objective into the next staff report.
I think actually what would be really helpful though would be to understand the case law behind that too.
Yeah.
And that's what we asked him to do.
I think Lisa
asked him to
Yeah,
come back with the case law for us. And I understand what Mike is saying about not wanting to have a discussion about the ins and outs of the clear and objective standards and the language in front of the attorneys for the applicant for this project. I think that it's important that we have I just don't think that, I think it's going to be very inhibiting all of us.
I'm happy to see if we can have an executive session on that if you'd like.
I think that's important.
I do too.
It may be very important before our next meeting.
Mhm.
Okay. We'll see if we can do that. If you guys could do it, 5:30 prior, a half hour prior, 5 o'clock prior.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that works.
Can I say something really quick? That article on Stanley, there's some pages missing. It goes 1 to 3, then 6 to 10. I just left out the unimportant stuff.
I got lost in the river of no return, didn't it?
Well, you can read it later.
Yeah.
Any other? Okay, anything good of the order?
We have had some good weather. That's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be.
We're too busy being inside to enjoy it.
Yeah,
No,
I
nothing.
have nothing.
Thanks, everyone, for the hard work.
Yeah, good.
There's something tonight. We really did.
Yeah, with that said, we are adjourned.
Eddie,
All right,
thank
good
you,
night,
Michael.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.